um, that they like have to do a face scan and they have to like show their tickets usually. And all right, so do you think I like Joe Rogan?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you know what Elephant Graveyard is?
Nope.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you all about it. So just one moment. I'm going to restart my stream on all my devices. And if you're like, do you have to do that now? Yes. Um.
I get it.
Yeah, it's my bread and butter. Okay. Elephant Graveyard. Okay. So there are these people. There's an industry. It's kind of an interesting industry. Oh, do you ever watch Podcast Cringe?
I didn't know that was even a thing.
Dog, it's some of the best produced um like podcast content I've ever seen. It's really good. And I'll talk about it in a second. Okay. There is a certain contingent of the internet that absolutely hates Joe Rogan, and especially what he's done to the comedy world. And I know that my voice is going to be wavering, like because I'm doing something on the computer. So just one moment, and it'll be back. Okay, so there's this guy who made this 2-hour documentary on like what Joe Rogan has done to the comedy world. And I watched it last night. I fell asleep to it, so that means I watched it times in a row because I just had it on repeat. And it, by the way, this is just something you may or may not know. If you ever want to watch something, well, like if you watch on a desktop computer, like do you use uBlock Origin?
Yeah, on my computer, yes.
Okay, excellent. Did I teach you about it, or did you know about it?
I knew about it before. I was asking, like, how do I block advertisements on YouTube on my phone? You're like, you have to download Firefox and then install uBlock Origin. But just with Brave browser on my new phone, luckily I don't have to even. The ad blocker for some reason just works on my phone already.
Are you sure that it works on YouTube?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like YouTube using Brave browser on my phone.
Okay.
It's blocked the uBlock.
Excellent.
But on my computer, I had to get uBlock for some reason.
Right. Okay. So if you ever want to watch, let's say I don't know, like you're on an old device. Like I have some old devices, and I want to watch things advertising free, but they're so old. They're like Amazon Fires. So this isn't even connected to like Android or iOS. It's like the Amazon store, which already closed down. It's not even like that. You can't even publish it on it anymore. If you just when you have a YouTube address that's like youtube.com / and then a whole bunch of shit. If you put a hyphen between the letter T and the letter U, YouTube, it will take you to another site that shows you what you wanted to watch on YouTube without commercials. So basically that works for anything, and it's really convenient. So if you didn't know that, that's a little cheat code. Okay, I do use that sometimes, actually, like on these old devices. All right, so there's this thing called Elephant Graveyard, and this guy made a 2-hour documentary on how Joe Rogan has ruined the comedy world. And it's kind of he makes good points. So basically, it was the middle of the pandemic, and they closed down the Comedy Store in Hollywood. And if you don't know how that went down, basically, and like Pauly Shore, do you know who Pauly Shore is?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so Pauly Shore's mom, Mitzi, the store with his dad. They got divorced. Anyway, his mom, Mitzi, ended up fucking like every comedian in LA. And there's arguments that that Joe Rogan was a member of the people who fucked her, but I don't think he was. In fact, I'm almost certain he was. I would just say like he wasn't, but people want him to have been, but that's not true. So, but she liked him. Anyway, so the pandemic comes down, and you gotta keep 6 feet of distance, and you can't have any super spreader events. And so the Comedy Store, I I know you haven't been there, but they have for the area a pretty big parking lot for the area. It's not like a Walmart parking lot, but for as valuable as the real estate is in that area, it's pretty big. Meaning they can probably park like 30 cars, no, maybe like 25 cars in the parking lot, which again for that area is really something. And anywhere else around there, it's really difficult to park. Really, really difficult. There's like it's built like into the side of a hill, and so you can park up the hill, but the, parking up the hill is like straight up. It's I can't believe they make people drive up these hills. It's incredible. But anyway, so they said at the Comedy Store that you can't have indoor events. So what the Comedy Store was going to do, and they did, was have an outdoor event where they would have everybody 6 feet apart. They put chairs 6 feet apart, and they'd have stand-up comedians go up and do stand-up. And the first night they did that, the city came to them and fined them like $150 or something. Not a major fine, but enough, and said, you're not allowed to have these types of events. And the Comedy Store made the argument, we aren't having like a super spreader event because everybody's 6 feet apart and where everybody's wearing masks and all that other shit. And they were told at the Comedy Store by the city of Los Angeles, we don't like the optics of it. Meaning like, it's like, we don't like, even though you're following the rules, it just doesn't look the way that we want it to look. And it was smart of them to do that because these comedians would have been like, how fucking stupid is this? They would have literally gone up there and just ripped on it the whole time. So they shut down the Comedy Store for like a year and a half. And Joe Rogan was had talked with, do you know who Ron White is?
Yeah, he drinks whiskey every time.
Exactly. So Ron White had moved to Austin. His son moved to Austin first in like 2016. Ron White moved there in 2018. Ron White used to live in Beverly Hills. And Ron White made a lot of money doing what was called blue collar comedy with like Jeff Foxworthy and Larry the Cable Guy and Bill Engvall back in the day. And this was like a really big comedy. So he has a lot of money to the point where he didn't have to work again. He just basically was doing stand up for fun. And he said to Joe Rogan that he moved to Austin, and he liked Austin because it's like 3 hours to New York and 3 hours to LA. It's right in the center of the United States. The people are really nice and the food is really good. So Joe Rogan had that in the back of his mind, and when they shut down the Comedy Store, Joe was pissed because he loves the Comedy Store more than like anybody. So he gets to talking with Ron White, and Ron White they were, I believe, in Austin at the time. Joe was just visiting because Texas had different laws than LA at the time. I mean, I can just tell you from experience, LA laws at that time were ridiculous, just like how strict they were. And in comparison to like from what I saw on TV about Texas, just like night and day. They were like, it was like different countries. So anyway, Ron White says to Joe Rogan, we got to build, you got to move out here. Or Joe said like something like, it's just, what happened was Joe and his family went to Austin during this time, and his kids and wife really liked it because they didn't have to do the whole masking and the 6 feet and all that other shit. And it was still like a fun environment, and Austin's cool and everything. Now, at that time, there wasn't any comedy going on in Austin. Not necessarily because um, not necessarily because Austin uh, had to, like shut it down because of COVID or the pandemic, but it just it was like a growing city, but it didn't just really have that big of a comedy scene. So, but they had a comedy a stand up comedy club there known as Cap City, standing for Capital City, because Austin is the capital of Texas. So Joe gets there, and everybody really liked that club before it closed, and gets to talking with Ron White and was like, you know what, I'm going to move out here, move my family out here. So he moves out there, announces that he's going to move out there, and this is right around the time he got a Spotify deal, and people had the suspicion that it was because the comedy store closed, but also he could basically move to Texas for free, because like in California there's like anywhere between 15 and 30% income tax, state income tax, which is one of the highest in the country. And Texas, along with a few other states like Nevada and Florida and Tennessee, they don't have tax. So basically, Joe Rogan had this $250 million Spotify deal, and if he would have done it, like lived in California, then then the state of California would have gotten like of that money, some like well like 30 up to like 30% of it, and that would have been like $80 million. So if he just did the same show that he does from Austin, he would save $80 million. So it made a lot of sense for him to do that, though he doesn't talk about that part all that much. All right. So then he buys or like signs paperwork on a place that was going to be new club, but it turned out that there was a documentary on it, and there was like a cult that was there, and so he got out of that, and then he bought what was called an Alamo Draft House, which are like theaters that were big in the early where you could like sit in couches, and they had food, and it was like a movie theater. All right, so it was still a year and a half. It took him a year and a half to build the comedy mothership, and so he talks Red Band and Tony Hinchcliffe to come out there. Then um, they wanted to do it. They wanted to move out there because they were doing Kill Tony virtually, and it sucked. It was just like I like those episodes, but they're just not very good. Um, and there's just some nostalgia to them. So Red Band and Tony Hinchcliffe move out there, and Joe Rogan's on Kill Tony a lot in those days. And they did it from first this place. I don't even remember the name of it. And then Tony Hinchcliffe told a joke. He used it's like a racial term for Asian people that starts with C and ends with a K. And there was a huge amount of backlash, and he did it during Asian Heritage Month. So what ends up happening is Tony gets canceled a whole bunch, and the place where they were doing Kill Tony says they can't do it there anymore. So then they go to another place, Vulcan Gas Company, and then they did there, and Joe Rogan was on those episodes a lot too. And then once the comedy mothership opened, that's when Kill Tony kind of came into its own and started becoming more and more a national, like, or international sensation. So this all is getting to where just the story. All right, so that
Nice. Oh my god.
I know, but
20-minute back.
I know. Do you know this? Well, because it's all the documentary. Do you know this backstory?
I knew some of it,
Okay.
but it's cool. It's cool.
So then Joe Rogan opens the comedy mothership, and it becomes like a sensation in Austin. and all these people moved to Austin, but some bigger comics as well, like Shane Gillis and Tim Dillon, and who else moved there? Like a bunch of medium-sized comics. Oh, Tom Segura moved there. Some other people, and started doing their shows from there. And basically, the way that Joe Rogan could convince these guys to do this stuff is, look, you're already on the road. You know, out of 52 weeks out of the year, like maybe 40 weeks out of the year. So you're already all over the place. If you stay in New York or California, they're going to charge you state income tax. So if you just have your address be Texas, you're going to save a whole lot of money. And so a lot of these guys moved there, and it was a smart move for them to move there. All right. Then, most recently, well, Kill Tony becomes a sensation. It overtakes the Joe Rogan Experience on the YouTube list, and it is its own show now, basically. And um, they don't really need Joe Rogan anymore, like they maybe once did. They're like basically independent for that. Oh, then the people who moved to uh, Austin no longer a lot of people don't enjoy it anymore, because where Joe opened this club, it's on 6th Street. Well, I've never been to Austin. Uh, I've just heard, and like everybody says, that 6th Street is just like a huge shithole because it's right by the homeless shelter, and all these people do drugs there, and it's just it's just full of people who will rob you and all kinds of stuff like that. So, but Joe Rogan, who when he goes to his club, goes with private security that were like Navy SEALs, and they like block off the whole. Yeah, isn't that funny? Like he goes in a whole motorcade when he goes to his place, which it's like he's kind of losing touch on what he was, which was not that he didn't start off a wealthy person. He started off pretty poor, but now he has. That's true, and it'll be interesting to see. Right. So, which they still haven't found the guy who shot him yet, which is really disturbing. You would have thought that.
No, they did. It's the CIA.
Yeah, dog. Dude, you want to know something? Okay, so I haven't been able to talk about this with anybody, but okay, so let me just finish the Joe Rogan thing. So I watched this whole documentary on it, and basically the documentary ends with all these people who moved to Austin just talking about it, basically saying that it's a shithole. And so Tim Dillon moved out, even though he still has 2 houses there. And Shane Gillis, like basically he's moving back to New York City. Now there's the next thing that's going to probably happen, or that I've heard, is Joe Rogan's going to start a comedy mothership in Brooklyn, and then another here in LA, which will be interesting to compete with the comedy store. Okay, so ask me what I think happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, July 13th, 2024.
No, we're not talking about the We'll definitely talk about the assassin, but this documentary was supposedly called Elephant Graveyard. You told me a 20-minute story, but you did not iterate really on how they actually ruined comedy. Seems like a clickbait title, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
made a few Canadians moved to like Austin, and maybe they had some regrets because Austin's kind of shitty and didn't live up to their expectations. Fine,
well, okay.
I think the
so
comedy is totally fine. There is kind of like a Joe Rogan sphere, like stranglehold though on the comedy.
And that's what
itself.
Yeah,
and
yeah. So that's what they talk about. Cat Williams. Do you know who Cat Williams is?
Yeah, he's the guy with the purple furry pimp coat, dude.
Absolutely, he's hilarious. He basically made a comment on the Shannon Sharp show, Club Shay Shay, that Joe Rogan has the same 6 unfunny comics on all the time, and just one moment, please. Pardon me. And so, like, basically, this is Tom Segura, Bert Kreischer, Ryan Callen, Brendan Schaub, and like what is that guy's last name? Andrew Schultz. Like, basically, that's who they talk about. And
I didn't know Andrew Schultz, and I'm fucking Joe Rogan, I guess.
oh yeah, he went on a lot. In fact, that's how I found out about him. Is Joe Rogan would like repost Andrew Schultz's shit during the pandemic. That was
I don't think Andrew Schultz is like a bad comedian though. I get that Cat Williams probably wants to get some of that funnel videos in his bank account.
And he did. And he did. After saying that, his special went to number 1 on Netflix. Like, he got this huge bump from it. And basically they said that like those comics aren't. I think Andrew Schultz of that group is funny, and he shouldn't be included with that. And Cat Williams didn't name exactly who the 6 unfunny comics were, but there's this huge like backlash against Joe Rogan for just not being very funny. Like, his specials they're okay. I mean, they're like, I've watched them. There was a time when I went for like 39 years of my life until this summer, never having seen Joe Rogan stand up, basically, maybe a clip here or there. And I finally went through and watched all his specials, and he's an okay stand up comedian. I'm not going to say he's unfunny, but he isn't one of the greats. At least he can be really funny. And I think if I were to sit with him or his friend, I would think he'd be really funny. But there's a certain level of his funny and like George Carlin funny or Rodney Dangerfield funny. Like, that's another level of comedian. Well, Elephant Graveyard.
He's more. He's in my brain. He's a UFC commentator first, then a podcaster, like interviewer second, and then a fucking elk hunter third, and then like whole lot this shit, and then it's like.
That's what I love about him, though. I love how well-rounded a person he is.
I think he's just like a likable, good person, which is great. He's not just like hilarious bone cracker, like funny. That's fine. I don't think he needs to be. I think he's good the way he is, but I get people could be like, yeah, he could be more funny.
I agree. What more do you want from him?
No one forces you to watch it.
Exactly. Exactly. But I mean, he's just so good at so many different things. I don't even want to say he's so good. He's had the opportunity to be really good at so many things. He wasn't ever a really good actor, but I remember him being on news radio. And then Fear Factor, I really liked him on Fear Factor. And I really liked him on the Chappelle Show when he did 2 Chappelle shows. And then I really liked what he did with Carlos Mencia, calling out Carlos Mencia as a joke thief. I really liked that. And then I remember watching, I was in a different apartment in Fullerton, California, when the Joe Rogan Experience started. And it was December 26th, 2009. And it was very quickly in my feed on YouTube, and I started watching them like really early on. I mean, like very, very early on. Like, I can say like I'm an OG Joe Rogan fan from those days. And then there have been times when I didn't listen to him though, and then I'd have to catch up on episodes and such. But he like revolutionized podcasting, dude. I saw this clip of him today. Do you know who Tom Green is? You should.
I do.
He's Canadian. Yeah, exactly. So do you remember? You probably don't, but do you know what the Tom Green Show was?
I've seen like a couple episodes. I know.
So I loved the Tom Green Show when I was a kid. It used to be on MTV, like usually late at night, but it was.
I think Eric Andre. The Tom Green's crazy pranks.
Absolutely. And Joe Rogan says that Tom Green inspired him. And I watched this episode today or this clip of Joe Rogan sitting. Tom Green basically set up like a Tonight Show setup with like a desk and chairs and a couch, and he had a sidekick, and they would just live stream on the internet. And they took this content and had it on. I don't know if it was CBC or what is it, CBN? What's a Canadian broadcasting network? Is CBN?
BBC
CBC?
Broadcasting Channel.
Okay. I don't know if it was on that, but it was on some Canadian show and some Canadian channel. And then the United States used to syndicate it on MTV. And Tom Green would just do things that I really liked. I'll say this, like, at least being an inspiration to me, Joe Rogan certainly has been Tom Green and the show Jackass. Do you know what the show Jackass is? I'm sure you probably do. Where they would just take a camera. Exactly. It was just like this.
I've only really seen the movies, and I realized like a month ago, like 2 months ago maybe, I was like, oh, I can actually watch the TV show. I've never even seen the TV show.
Dude, the TV show is so nostalgic for me because my friends and I used to just watch it like when we were in high school. They always came on really late, and they would have like, they would just show them over and over and over again because MTV didn't really have any programming at that time. Music videos had become too expensive to run, so they would just show Jackass all the time because it didn't get the highest ratings, but it got pretty good ratings. And it was something that you could just show all the time. And you know, when you're in high school and that shit's like super funny to you. And I remember when I saw Jackass the movie, it was at that time it was harder than I'd ever laughed. And I was at my friend's house and
you watched it in theaters, I'm guessing?
No, we did not. We rented it from Blockbuster and we watched it at my friend's house. His mom had this like really fancy room of their like this. They had like a part of their house built on, and we watched it like in this pure white room with like all these windows, and it was like hilarious that like here we're watching a guy take a a, a toy car and shove it up his ass in a condom in this like very like dainty like place of their house. And we had to be careful because we didn't want his parents like finding out what we were watching. I did not watch it in theaters, and the reason why I didn't watch it in theaters was it just wasn't that. I don't want to say it wasn't that big. It was just like, oh, it's those guys from that TV show. It's not. It wasn't like a revolution like it would become. Okay, so then that was an inspiration. Well, so and Tom Green would do some things like that where he would kind of these man on the street things where he would just go up to people and be like, you know, like, what do you think of my, you know, what do you think of whatever? He just like man on the street stuff is really interesting to me. So but Tom Green was definitely an inspiration. So Joe Rogan's on Tom Green, and you see him where he gets the idea for the Joe Rogan experience, where they're just drinking like a Corona beer, and Joe Rogan's like, "Wow, this is great." So you're just like live streaming, and Tom Green's like, "Yeah, you know, it's just like on the internet." And Joe's like, "If you could somehow monetize this would be a game changer because you wouldn't have to worry about advertisers anymore. Like you literally see the gears working." And very soon thereafter, Joe Rogan started the Joe Rogan Experience. And the only reason why he was able to do that is he had contracts with NBC from Fear Factor. I mean, he had made a lot of money. He is the most fortunate person and he says this, when it comes to Hollywood of any person ever. He has gone on two not interviews, but castings, and he got both of them. He got the one that they did like a baseball show that got canceled, and then he did news radio. And then since then, everybody's known who he was and everything. And he didn't have to. He did the UFC for the first like 6 times that they did it. He did it for free. He just did it because he loved the sport and knew it was going to be really big. And it's really interesting to watch him in old interviews where people are like, you know, like, don't you think that it's like like immoral to have two guys beat up on each other? And he's like, this is what boxing is. It's the fact that you can go to the ground. It's like exactly the same thing, but it's just way more exciting. And it's in a cage and everything. And anyway, so you could see on Tom Green, like where Joe Rogan says Tom Green and the Podfather, the guy who used to be an MTV VJ, who had like the first real podcast. They were like his inspirations. And then he and Red Band started doing like behind the scenes footage at the Comedy Store that eventually then they started live streaming it, which is what I did too. I have all this footage of myself at the Comedy Store, but also just all over California, just like basically from GoPros. And then eventually I started live streaming it. So Joe basically starts his podcast. It gets to be really big, and revolutionizes comedy. But the people are like basically very critical of what he's done to comedy in general. So they're critical of Kill Tony, which is like kind of Joe Rogan branch off, because you have to have like 1 minute of and be really funny, and if you're not funny, you don't succeed. So that just some things. In fact, Bill Burr has spoken out about that. He's been on Kill Tony one time, and he was like, "This isn't fair. Like, you're not giving people a chance to really, be funny and tell stories and stuff. They have to be funny within 1 minute. That's not enough time." Which there's that argument, and Joe Rogan has put like a lot of people out there who aren't funny, and but yet he's kind of shoved them down people's throats. And so there's this one thing that happened. There's this female comedian. Her name is Annie Letterman, and she has this story where so Brendan Schaub, that guy I always talk about, she and he were at the Comedy Store, and Brendan asked her if he would walk her to his truck, and she's like, what? Like basically in a later story, she's like, why? So I could blow you? Like, I don't want to hang out with you. You're married and you have kids. Like, that's a scumbag thing to do. So she was on this podcast in Annie Letterman with this Kalaya, this girl from Bobby Lee's podcast. It's called like,
I know.
You know who I'm talking. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. Okay. And so they talk about, they don't name Brendan Schaub's name, but they say that there's just this unfunny comic who wanted Annie to walk her to his truck, and Kalaya says, yeah, like this guy texted her like a few years before on New Year's, and it's just like scumbag behavior. And Brendan Schaub comes out and is like, I didn't do that. And they're like, we didn't name you, but now you're just basically like waving the flag at yourself. Anyway, this Annie Letterman went around and I think basically said, like basically called out Brendan Schaub. And Annie Letterman used to be on the Joe Rogan Experience. Like, at least she's been on before, but now she's like not invited to the Comedy Mothership. And they're critical of Joe Rogan. Like, basically, like, you have to side with him or else you get cut off. And then, like, she's gonna have a fine career. She'll be fine. She's good looking and funny and stuff like that. But at least, like, the Elephant Graveyard documentary, but he's made two of them. He made like an hour-long one, and then most recently he did another one. The first one's called Comedy Czar, and the second one is called Comedy Armageddon or something like that. And basically, it just goes into the fact that, like, if you don't go with Joe, he will cut you off. And I don't think he's like that much, but that's how they make it out to be. Okay, so Brendan Schaub, who is not the sharpest knife in the drawer, goes on. He was just on his podcast and with Brian Callen, the fighter and the kid, and they had somebody call in, and this guy called in and he was like, should I get a haircut or should I shave my head? What do you guys think? That was like the question that the caller posed, and they were like, Brendan Schaub's like, I know a lot of guys who shave their head and slang dick, like Dana White, Joe Rogan. That's about it. He didn't say Jeff Bezos at that time, but basically, then this raised this huge alarm. Like, whoa, Joe Rogan is married. What do you mean he's slanging dick? And I get how Brendan Schaub said this. Like, I say it all the time, slanging dick like it's going out of style. Like it's just like a saying. Like you're killing it. Like you're doing really well. But it made it sound like Joe Rogan was cheating on his wife. And so Brendan Schaub had to come out and be like, no, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant it like he was doing really well. Dana White does his own thing, like, and Jeff Bezos too. But I was just saying that like you can have a bald head and still do really well. I did not mean it like he was cheating on his wife. So it caused all this uproar. And then for a while, Joe Rogan kind of kept a little bit of distance. As I've said previously all the time, Brendan Schaub is the number one person ever on the Joe Rogan Experience. He's the number one guest, but he hadn't been on in like a year until this past weekend. He was on. So he was on for. Have you ever seen these fight companions they do?
On Joe Rogan.
On Joe Rogan, yeah. So what Joe Rogan does is, if there's a fight that he's not doing the interviews, he doesn't do them all. He doesn't do them if they're like in other countries or if they're not like a big UFC event. What he'll do is he'll have his friends over, like Brian Callen, and they had this other like UFC guy, and then Brendan Schaub, and they will watch them, and then they have a little clock in the corner so that you can kind of sync it up so that you're like watching it with them. It's a cool thing. And so Brendan Schaub was on there this past weekend. So it was the first time in like more than a year that he'd been on. But now he's on, or maybe, I don't know if it's been more than a year, but something like that. Anyway, long story short, very long story short, this documentary went into all of this and all the things. Like basically, if you aren't on Joe Rogan's side in comedy nowadays, then you're like an outsider. You have to be part of this boys club. It's called the Rogan Sphere for a reason. And in reality, Joe Rogan isn't the head of it. It's really like Shane Gillis, who is like the hottest comedian in comedy right now. And so Joe Rogan does what he can to like be in good graces of Shane Gillis, because Shane Gillis would just be like, fuck it. I'm big enough now that I can do whatever I want. And I have a big enough podcast that I can do whatever I want. And I don't need fucking Austin, Texas. I have New York City and Philadelphia and LA and stuff. And Bill Burr Bill Burr is kind of, a lot of people would say Bill Burr's part of the Rogan Sphere, but argument that he's not, because he and Joe Rogan got into it over like medical issues, and I don't think he's been on since, and I don't know if that's Joe's not having Bill on or Bill just didn't have anything to promote or whatever. There's the argument that was recently made about Joe Rogan and somebody. Bert Kreischer and Tom Segura. They used to have this, or I think they still do, a podcast called Two Bears, One Cave. And it's just like the worst podcast in the world. It's literally two really rich dudes talking about how much money they have and then selling their tequila to everybody, pour osos or something like that. And that's all they do. I mean, it's like they've lost connection with anybody. And if you really look into the backgrounds of these podcasters or these comedians, a lot of them come from a lot of money, and you have to, because you're not working. It's like you need somebody to support you. Like Bert Kreischer's dad is a lawyer for the Church of Scientology in Clearwater, Florida, and Tom Segura's dad was a a vice president at Merrill Lynch, and Brian Callen's dad was an international banker, and Whitney Cummings' dad was or her mom was like a, a regional director or something for Neiman Marcus. It's like these people, like when you start to look into their backgrounds a little bit, it's like, oh, no wonder they're able to just sit around and talk into a microphone all day because they don't have to work a real job. Like very few of them have a Joey Diaz kind of story where they didn't have anything and they had to basically beg, borrow, and steal and all that other shit. So like the idea is this: like when you get into that world, that comedy world, where you to be in Joe Rogan's good graces, you uh, basically have to. Well, he's starting to make
I
it.
think here.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry, finish your point.
You basically have to get connected with him in order to get into comedy nowadays. And the way that he has built the system is you start as a door person at the comedy mothership, like a lot of people did at the comedy store, and then you work your way up, like Casey Rocket did, and Cam Patterson. And now Cam Patterson's going to be on Saturday Night Live.
I don't know who the fuck that is.
You don't know who Cam Patterson is?
Good for them.
Oh, Cam Patterson?
Let me look up their face and see if they.
He's like the biggest thing in comedy nowadays, up and coming.
Cam with a K?
Yeah.
That was Black Kid?
Yeah. So he came from like a poor background in Orlando, Florida. He was a stand-up comedian for 2 years.
Was this guy on Kill Tony?
Yeah. And then somebody told there's another friend that he had, another guy named Cam, who told the people at Kill Tony, look, friend Cam Patterson is going to be in town. You want to get this guy on. He's really, really funny. He's been doing this for 2 years. Tony fell in love with him the first time he saw him and made him a regular immediately. He started selling merch on the Tony store like crazy. He could sell anything and it would sell. In fact, he even would sell rocks, just like rocks that you would get at a landscaping store, and he would sell them for $10 each. And then eventually he is now going to be in that. He was in a Kevin Hart movie on Netflix, and he's going to be in that Theo Vaughn and David Spade movie with William Montgomery.
Okay.
And then he made it to Saturday Night Live, which is the biggest kind of comedy thing that you can do in the United States.
Got it.
So that's what this documentary is on. And then I cut you off. So what did you want to say?
I don't know. I do know. But I was just looking at a list of the top 100 comedians, or a few lists of, like, you can type it in, top 100 comedians.
Is that the comedy? Is that the Comedy Central list?
No. I was looking at IMDb and Ranker.
Oh, okay, good. What does it say is number one? Jerry Seinfeld?
On the IMDb one, or sorry. So it says Dave Chappelle on the Ranker one.
Okay.
This one's weird though. I wouldn't think Bill Burr is the number 2 comedian in the world. I don't know how this is rated though. I don't really know.
Right.
It says best comedians. It's a classic crowd ranking performed by the fans' perspective.
Okay.
So just basically who's the funniest is kind of who they're voting on. Well, from Play on Gay, illustrate. I was also going to say that it's maybe things have changed, and I add that. But if you go to like the top 100 list, like I'll just start naming people. Is Mark Normand at all in the Joe Rogan sphere? Because I would not say that he is.
Yeah, I would say that he is. He, he's been on Kill Tony recently, and he's been on the Joe Rogan Experience. Basically, anyone who's been on the Joe Rogan Experience kind of
I believe that he started in New York and had no connections to, like, before he got on Kill Tony and all that shit. Like,
right.
He was building his own.
Right. As I understand, he's from New Orleans, and he started at the Comedy Cellar along with like Shane Gillis and those guys.
Right.
The Comedy Cellar.
So John Mulaney.
He's from CK. He's from Chicago. John Mulaney's from Chicago. John Mulaney's
not
from
in the Rogan.
John Mulaney's from Chicago, not in the Rogan sphere.
Actually, Louis C.K. is from Boston, but I don't think he needed Joe Rogan's help whatsoever to become successful. I don't even.
Actually,
he's done like maybe one or two.
Actually, Louis C.K. is from Mexico. Actually, Louis C.K. is from Mexico.
Well, he grew up in Boston. He was born
correct.
there, but he grew up in Boston.
Right, and he did not. He was a writer on several TV shows. So but you understand they're all related.
No, that's the point I'm making, that Louis C.K. does not have a connection, or at least a strong connection to the Rogan sphere.
That's correct.
And my point is that a lot of these comedians in the top 100, Jim Gaffigan,
Correct.
Jimmy Carr,
correct.
Gabriel Iglesias, Pat Williams,
correct.
Dave Attell,
correct.
Like, a lot of them don't have a connection to the Joe Rogan sphere.
But you're naming all veteran comedians, not younger comedians. Keep going.
Well, that was the part of my second point, is that I'm saying, like, right now maybe it's evolved where, like, he has this gatekeeper, like, privileges, admin privileges for, like, this internet success overnight.
Well, and it has a lot to do with the podcasting world. All those other guys that you named they didn't have podcasts, but like now, one thing that this documentary covered is no longer do you make money. Well, like before, you would just make money doing stand-up comedy. Then when the podcast world came out, it was something that you did in order to make people aware of where you were going to be doing comedy and to build up a little bit of an audience, so that you'd be like, hey, I'm going to be in Tempe or Arizona, and then everybody in Tempe would know that you were coming there. But now these podcast things have become almost, if not more lucrative for many of these people because of the ad reads and the endorsements than actually doing stand-up comedy. So they almost have become podcasters more than they are comedians.
Sorry, can you explain that again?
Absolutely. So back in the day, there was no podcasting. So these guys were just stand-up comedians. Louis C.K. Do you know who Dane Cook is?
Louis C.K. was on the Opie and Anthony radio show a bunch of times. It's just practically like a podcast just on the radio.
Well, wait, hold on. That's how you used to have to do it. So you'll hear these comedians, veteran comedians, who would say, let's say they were in Boston. Howard Stern exactly is who it was. And he was the biggest thing in New York. Wherever you were, in whatever city, you would do morning radio. He'd be like, hey, I'm going to be at the Funny Bone in Wichita, Kansas. And you would do that every single morning. There was like a schedule that they would do. It was usually be in town by Thursday to do Friday morning radio, promote your shows for Friday and Saturday. And then I believe also Sunday they would do a show, and then leave on Monday. Or sometimes they would leave on Sunday, but stay till Monday if the drugs were good, as Ralphie May used to say. And then next city for the next week. Like that was your week. But you would always do either Thursday morning radio or Friday morning radio to make sure people knew that you were in town, and so they would buy tickets. That was that was what you would do. Okay, so these comedians would do that, and they did that for like from the 1980s to the 1990s to the 2000s. You would do morning radio, but then with the podcast world that occurred, these comedians realized that if they did podcasts, they didn't necessarily have to do morning radio as much because they would already sell out by the time they got to the city. So there's no reason to do morning radio tickets if you're already sold out. It's just another thing that you have to do, and you don't want to have to do it if you've already sold all the tickets. In the beginning, like 2010, early 2010s, doing podcasting wasn't that lucrative financially, but it has become to the point where these comedians actually make as much money or more money doing their podcasts than they did for just doing the stand-up comedy. So many of them, I mean, not many, but some of them have just even stopped doing stand-up comedy. The big one who's done this is Brendan Schaub. But even like Tom Segura doesn't do as much stand-up comedy as he once did because he makes money on Your Mom's House and all their studios and all his endorsements and Two Bears, One Cave and all of that. Like basically, they don't have to go on the road every single weekend like they once did because their podcasts bring in money. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So that's what we learned about the Joe Rogan sphere, and a lot of people don't like him, but until he really fucks up, I've learned this with anybody, whether it's a politician or just anybody has skeletons in their closet. Not everybody's perfect. I know I'm not perfect, but basically, like I recognize that Joe Rogan does to. He's revolutionized a bunch of industries. He revolutionized the health industry, the podcasting industry, the mixed martial arts. He did Fear Factor, which was a. What'd you say?
Vaccine industry.
All that. Yeah, that's a health industry. But I don't know if you remember if it was big in Canada, but Fear Factor was huge in the United States. It was a revolution. It was like one of the biggest shows on TV. And when I think he could do that again and make it a giant thing, like absolutely giant. I think they had Chris who did it after Joe Rogan. It just was never as big. Okay, so, but Joe Rogan will tell you, as will any of these comedians, the real comedian who changed the game when it came to comedy in the early 2000s was Dane Cook, because Dane Cook got on MySpace and he got a lot of girl. Like he's a good looking dude, and he got a lot of girl fans, and he would like cultivate them using the internet. And so he's like the person who everybody gives a lot of credit to, and they give a lot of credit. And his stand up was fucking hilarious. In 2004, there was no bigger comedian in the world than Dane Cook. He's kind of like what Matt Rife is today for the TikTok generation, but he was for MySpace, and he was giant. And okay, with that, that's enough comedy for now. Ask me what I think happened. Go ahead.
Can I take like a fork in the road to a different discussion that I wanted to have?
Absolutely.
Kind of why I came back here. And it is related to comedian pop. And I believe we may have talked about it a few months ago, but I kind of put this idea on the back burner. I'm not sure why, if there was like a wrench in the whole machining about, but do you remember I feel like you must remember, but I was talking to you about like this company start, which was the creator tokenization platform, and basically it came to me in a dream where I was scrolling on a website with a bunch of podcasts on it. You could click on whatever your belly podcast, and there was a coin attached to the podcast that represented, if you like buy the coin, you're buying shares in the podcast, which like the shares represent like revenue sharing of the podcast itself. So you would own a little piece of Tiger Belly, similar to kind of how fractional real estate works.
Yeah, I remember this vividly.
And then I was like, oh, this could apply to other creator economies, such as OnlyFans models, or the big one would be YouTube, or a big one, music artists, which is all like YouTube, Spotify. Basically, apparently there's this book on it called, it's like the Unincorporated Man, and it's about a guy who wakes up in the future, and he's one of the only, or he's like the only person who like isn't completely owned by a corporation, and not to be like super dystopian or whatever, because that's all this. The goal, I guess, is to actually like drive growth for these just by having them a revenue stream, and then also providing a new like incentive structure for their fans, where the fans are actually incentivized to promote it more because they actually own a stake in their investment, and also it's just better. It's basically like Patreon, but Patreon you can buy the token and it actually like get paid dividends, as well as access like exclusive content through the ownership. And so I'd be like, yeah, if Joe Rogan issued a coin, there'd probably be a whole lot of people that would want to buy the coin if the coin was putting out earnings of the Joe Rogan podcast into your bank account as dividends. And yeah, you can also potentially compound those dividends with other lending protocols in order to get even better yield. So yeah, please tell me why. I mean, I was speaking to some people in a Telegram chat earlier, and I told them the idea, thought that it sounded interesting. Not that it's like the easiest set of hurdles to overcome, but it's possible. So yeah, give me the whole 9 yards truth, the rabbi serum of painful why my idea sucks or doesn't suck, whatever it is. Because yeah, I find it interesting that like somehow, I mean, it came to me in a dream, but like there isn't a protocol yet, like tokenization of all these things is coming in the world, but no one's really talked about the tokenization of the creator economy.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think that it is okay. So do I just think that? No. Okay. So the reasons why I think it could work. So like it's kind of, I know what tokenization is and everything, but I just want to create an analogy. It would be like a company sells stock, a podcast would sell stock, basically, right?
Absolutely, like the perfect parallel.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great idea. And so creators do this already to some extent with endorsements that they do. So like if I like the Joe Rogan Experience, then I can support him by buying stuff on it and Athletic Greens or AG1 or all of that shit that he sells. That's how I can support it. But I don't have a share or any ownership in the podcast. So this would basically
Correct.
be like, and then there are other ways that you can support podcasters. The big one is Patreon, and but you get any ownership of the podcast. So this would allow you to get ownership. Now, I like it. I'm not like I hear people come in with shitty ideas every day, and this is not one of them. This is a good idea. Okay. So I don't even want to say why it wouldn't work because I think you could make it work, and I don't say that about every idea that people tell me. Normally, I'm really good at just being like, well, there's this huge loophole, or not even loophole. There's this huge red flag.
You're getting done. China's gonna copy it. The bear scare will never take off.
Yeah, all of that. Yeah, anything like that. Okay. Okay. So let's use an example um, of something that neither of us really like, but both know about. Okay. You mentioned Tiger Belly. Okay, so we're gonna use Tiger Belly as our example, since neither of us are like super diehard about it, but we both know about it. That's Bobby Lee and Kalila, and I don't even know what they do, but it's from Bobby Lee's garage in Burbank, something like that, and it's really brightly colored. It's been around a long time. Okay, so Bobby Lee starts saying we need more money, we're getting popular or whatever. Maybe we're not, and so we're going to offer 100 shares for this. Well, I think Tiger Belly had it is a business already because that's why he and Kalila, even though they're not dating anymore, they like own that business together. So I'm sure there's Tiger Belly LLC. I'm almost certain that's what it is. So you basically would be taking that company public and offering 100 shares or whatever, a million shares, whatever. But you just make you don't necessarily make the pod. It's there's a way to do it to tokenize the podcast as well, and I get that. But basically, you could just have Tiger Belly LLC offer uh, have an IPO, an initial public offering, for some amount of stock, and then you just buy into the company. Do we agree that's an option?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, is it that? I thought like as a company you have to be like big enough for like the stock exchange.
No, no. You can like if you want to get on the Dow Jones, that's a big one. But get on Nasdaq, which is smaller, or it's called um the Russell 5,000. There are like 5,000 companies on that, and even smaller organizations. Like I was a part of an organization that was just run by two people, and they had stock. So it's just however your attorneys draw it up. But basically, they could sell stock in their company. They didn't. That's not what they were in it for. But it was just like how they distributed ownership of their company. So no, it doesn't have to necessarily be on an exchange. Now, if you want to be on an exchange, then I think you have to go through the SEC and some other things. But basically, like Tiger Belly could potentially, if it got big enough, uh, meaning like they had enough interest, they would do an IPO, an initial public offering for whatever their, let's say, stock at $1, just for simplicity. And then anyone who liked their podcast could buy that stock, and then they would own part of Tiger Belly LLC.
Does that become a security the moment you allow outside investors that are trying to make a return?
To my knowledge, it would.
apparently, like somehow, like, with the tokenizing real estate, which tokenizing real estate through an NFT is like basically just taking stocks and digitizing it. But the way that they frame it, an NFT somehow just void this securities label. And I think when you're dealing with the SEC and securities, there's just a whole lot of legal jargon and hoops to wave your hips around in a circle with.
Yeah. So basically, like I would say a better example of this is Your Mom's House, because that's Tom Segura and that Chrissy P or whatever, and they have that show, and then they have a bunch of other shows underneath them, and they've become like a podcast studio that you go in there and you rent out their stuff. And I think that probably is worth more than Bobby Lee's company. So like that, Your Mom's House, I think probably is worth probably 10, maybe more than $10 million right now. So that one, they do an IPO, and then people would buy their stock. They don't need to do it. It's not, they make money doing what they're doing. Tom Segura is killing it. I mean, he's now no longer doing podcasting or comedy. He's directing movies. Did you know this?
I did not know that.
Yeah, so
the movie business seems like very close to gambling almost.
Oh, it definitely is. And if there's something called Hollywood accounting, it's really shitty what happens. So, it's terrible. Okay, so let's say you make an independent, and it's not an independent film, but you make a small film, you personally, with, let's say, Warner Brothers, and your movie has a budget of $1 million, and let's say it makes $100 million, like it makes 100x, and your movie is just on, I don't know, a podcast movie, let's just say. Oh, that's great. So you should, and let's say in your contract, whatever you were going to make on the movie, let's say they were going to pay you a base of $100,000, and then whatever the box office was, you were going to make that many X. So you would have made 100X. So you would have made 10 million. But with Hollywood accounting, what they do sometimes, and it's not right, but then they'll do this. They'll take a movie like, I don't know, Transformers 10 or whatever, some movie that loses a lot of money, and they will take the editing fees that they would have done, that they did on Transformers 10, let's just say Transformers 12, whatever movie it is, and give those to your movie, and just say that it took more money than we thought it was going to do post-production editing. And that means that your movie, when normally it made 100x, that's great, but they add a $50 million post-production cost to it. Or another one that they'll do something like this. They'll say, all right, let's say our marketing budget for your movie is going to be $10 million, whatever. Forget the numbers I said before. So this is a new movie. Our marketing budget for you is $10 million. You're like, great. What they'll do is sometimes take out of your marketing budget and promote some other movie. But since it's all under the same umbrella, they have a way of just basically not giving you the same marketing that they said they were going to, and giving it to another movie. It's really disgusting what happens. And there's not a whole you can do with.
I mean, if it's Warner Brothers and they own, who's the Mom's House guy? What's his name?
Tom Segura.
Director did.
Tom Segura.
Yeah, so Tom Segura, he's partnered with Warner Brothers to produce the movie, right? He's probably putting up like zero stake, or maybe a little bit of stake in the movie, but like Warner Brothers is probably financing like 95% of it or something. So doesn't it make sense that Warner Brothers can just be like, oh, we need to like balance, like basically Warner Brothers is just saying, okay, we produced again 25 movies like this quarter, and fucking 8 of them are like underwater and shit overall. So we just need to like, I don't know, somehow do some Hollywood bullshit accounting to make it so that we're hunky dory.
Well, and that's what happens, and it just could hurt people in the end because they had agreed to do one thing, and then it turns out that it didn't work out that way. And unless you want to go to court with these people, you just have to take it. I mean, you could war with Warner Brothers, but guess what? You're not going to get your next movie with them, and probably Disney isn't going to want to work with you. And you know, there are only so many movie studios, and you'll basically blackball yourself.
Pirate Bay should be held accountable for like they're being sued by like Warner Brothers and like all these media companies for sharing and like file sharing.
Right.
But the files that you're sharing are like clearly illegal.
Not sharing them.
You have regulate.
But he's not sharing them. So he's just the middleman. He just gives. He just
allowing it to happen.
That's true.
You're not monitoring.
Right. I understand that. I think that
maybe they did. I don't think so though, because they were internet law. Just like, yeah, you're good.
That's how it worked. Napster got it years ago. It's the same argument to this. Do you prosecute it's not exactly this, but like the Department of Transportation because people use the roads to do illicit drug deals? You get what I'm saying? It's not a perfect analogy, but it's similar to me. There's an argument to be made. We're going to prosecute the Department of Transportation people because they maintain the infrastructure for one drug dealer to get to another drug dealer. Yeah, but they didn't deal the drugs. They just had the infrastructure. In the same way, the Silk Road or Napster or the Pirate Bay just built the infra for one person to share with another. Does that make sense?
I see what you're saying.
It's very expensive, and you run into the issue where
arguably harming people's lives. Like maybe going to be any money to finance paying for content anymore. So it has repercussions on society.
I get that, and it does.
Not that like Warner Brothers is like, but they will if they keep spending millions of dollars. That usually.
I'm in agreement with you.
I'm not sure if this is the case, but I'm just gonna like draw a parallel here that I've seen YouTube basically making the assertion that thought of making artists poor, because the way that their revenue sharing works is like, it's basically like
It's ridiculous.
fractionalized like podcast investor token. Like all the artists, like the cumulative artists, are all put into a pool, and their percentage ownership of how much of the total subscription pool payout that's allocated to them is based on how much according to if you have to get a ton of listeners, you get more of your middle dude, you get middle share version, blah blah. But because the subscription model is like only $9.99 and it's stretched now with like audiobooks and music, it basically like it's spreading that $9.99 subscription like thinner and thinner. And I'm gonna assume that with Netflix and other streaming platforms, this like subscription model of $9.99, that $9.99 or whatever the fuck it is, like they need to, because the stream didn't really even exist a while ago.
What you're saying is true. It's basically a limited pot, and everybody's got to share it. And that's why I don't think that model works. If you want to know the way that it should work, artists should give their music away. Music, especially today, is not hard to make, especially with computers and AI and stuff. Where you should make the money as an artist is your concerts. So the way to do it is give your music videos away, give your songs away, 100%. Give them away. Put them in commercials for free and everything. And everyone will like your music because it's everywhere. And then charge your tickets and your merchandise. That's how you make money. You know, somebody like Snoop Dogg only makes like $70,000 a year on all his music on Spotify. It's not that much. I mean, $70,000 is good, but he's got a huge catalog. It's not that much. But that's why he does all kinds of endorsements, and that's, you know, he does in-person TV shows and he does The Voice and all of that. That's where you make money. But you know why he's able to do all that? Because everybody has access to his music, or, you know, like knows his music. And so if you're an artist, if you want to make money, you've got to recognize that you're not like let's say you've got a really great voice. That's great. Are you hot? That's bigger than if you have a good voice, because with auto-tune, you can make anybody have a good voice. If you're hot and you are popular and you've got social media pull and everything, then you can easily make music. Like, you can take somebody like Sydney Sweeney, sing a song, and be really popular. Like, music is easy to do. What isn't as easy to do is visual stuff. Like, visual is much more difficult. And so, what I'm trying to say is, like,
what do you mean, like music videos?
Music videos are big, but even just TikTok and all that, like, things people see. Basically, music is pretty easy to produce and put out with AI. Now, years ago, it was not.
There's another market for this creator economy tokenization thing, is like TikTok revenue. You can just own a TikToker.
I get that. I get that. Okay. Let's talk. Let's talk. Well, so I think your idea is really good. I think that the future of the music industry, and they've already talked about this in martial arts and UFC, is they don't pay people to fight. They make their money in um in endorsements and advertising and stuff. So I think Dana White has even said that ideally they shouldn't have to pay the fighters. The fighters should fight for free, but the fact that they put them on this huge stage means that they'll be able to sell merchandise and do endorsements. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean that like Air Canada Center or whatever arena that's selling out is making so much money that I don't know, it seems kind of cheap to not pay them. It's like it's like Michael Jordan being like, "Oh, pay you in a bunch of signed like merchandise."
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So the phrase that they use is we're paying you
I'd rather just have
the phrase that they use is we're paying you an exposure. So the fact that we're putting you in front of all these people means that they're going to want to buy your t-shirts and go to your autograph signings and have you talk about their product. So you should want to do it for free. Like if you don't want to do it, that's fine. Somebody else will do it, then we'll make them the big star. So we're paying you an exposure.
yeah, I've seen a lot of people. I've also tried it. Or I'm forgetting for a while, but yeah, people sometimes do not appreciate the exposure as payment. They're like, we're real artists and we deserve to get paid, and exposure is bullshit. Like I'm promoting your thing for free, and like,
Yeah, so that's a big thing with artists. Like I see it a lot with creators. This is like a big thing, but like somebody will want to do art for somebody, especially like banners. Banners are really big. A lot of people, especially overseas, want to do banners for people because you just have to be like a graphic designer, or well, frankly, what you do for your brother, that's a really popular industry. And now what you do for your brother is really specific, but what I'm talking about are just the general ones. So one of these people, these graphic designers, will go to an influencer and say, I will do all your banners and I'll do all your thumbnails and everything. And then the only thing the influencer has to do is just in their profile say that their banner was by Tom Jones 123, and they get paid in exposure because people say, "Wow, I really like that banner," and the person's um, they read the person's profile and then see who created that stuff, and then they will go to them to do future work. Does that make sense?
yeah, exposure is the currency.
And then that means the influencer doesn't pay anything.
Like, like as soon as like the smartphone became like kind of like widely accessible, like people they still do it like all the time. Like they'll post on their like Instagram or whatever, like, oh hey, I'm standing next to like Donald Trump or whatever, or like like it's like they're farming these like celebrity photos, and maybe the celebrity isn't even giving them a shout out, but they're still just trying to squeeze all the juice out of just getting a picture with them.
Right. Yeah. And just being associated with them is big for your brand.
Oh yeah. Some people are like brutal at it, where it's like they just like it seems they're just try harding to be so cool, but it just comes across as really cringe.
Right.
Does anyone like the famous people that they're hanging out with are not like taking goofy pictures and posting it on their Instagram so that they can say to other people, "Oh, look who I'm hanging out with." You know,
A big thing that I see as well. Uh, exposure. So a lot of times, what these people do is they'll be like, "Hey, I need a new car," and so somebody will be like, "Okay, well, just come to our dealership, and if you do a post, we'll give you a 2-year lease on the house," something like that. If they're really big, and then they'll go and do it. They'll be like, buy your car at wherever, Fletcher Jones, Mercedes Benz, and they're really great. They'll take care of you. And then in exchange for that shout out, they'll get like a 2-year lease. Does that make sense?
must be nice being that popular. Holy fuck.
Yeah. But that's
Please go viral, Rabbi, so we can do that.
yeah. Like as we speak, I'm finding like loopholes in Twitch, and I'm trying to see if this one works. If you really want to know what it is, it'll be a game changer. My just need an impression. It's just basically when you make a when you come into someone's consciousness, and like that could be an email, that could be when I spam them, that could be a follow, whatever. And they make it really difficult on social media now to do like because they want advertisers to do that. They don't know how to tag someone. So I could like riser, and then you get a notification that I tagged you, and if bitch is game over, I'll be fucking famous by in a week. Tag you, does it the key is when I tag you, does it send you a notification or like an email or a free way of advertising? I can do that a lot to people. I just don't know if it's going to work. So I'm about your idea. I think it's a good idea. I think a share. Thinking, well, what if there aren't enough shares? Okay, then what's stopping the podcast from shilling a cryptocurrency? For you, a cryptocurrency based on their podcast, or an NFT based, a cryptocurrency or yes. What's stopping someone from doing that?
Like with that form,
Yeah,
basically?
exactly.
Yeah, nothing except for I don't think that people realize that there's like a creator economy that can be tokenized, but also why they want to use the platform is like this like network effect, because once all these like podcasts are all launching off this platform, users are going to go to this platform to see, oh, which podcast coin is best to buy. Where's all the volume going in the podcast world and the YouTube world, and that'll inform their decisions of where to invest. Because of that factor, then you'll want to use the platform in order to become part of that network. But I think beyond that, like Joe Rogan has said, I want to launch crypto coin, just not interested, it's all crap. And I get that, and I think that one of the big problems especially is that the coins themselves don't really have the solid use case or utility or backed by anything. They're basically just like vaporware, like no real substantial value. And some coins like Bonk and whatever, they're Solana and integrating into phones, and that's what they're doing, is they're trying to find something that gives the coin value other than a digital interface that has an order book that people are switching back and forth between currencies to purchase it. But where do we go with that?